Welcome to our first FabFems Friday, hosted by the UT Austin Women in Engineering program. Today we have 3 engineering students with us to share their stories and to share their experiences. We have Sana, who's an electrical engineering junior. We have Jane, who is a chemical engineering senior. And we have Abby, who recently graduated with her bachelor's in civil engineering. We also have Women in Engineering program coordinator Amy Beebe here to moderate the questions and moderate the panel. Our first question for our panelists is, what are some of the challenges that you have faced as an engineering student, and what have you done to overcome those?
One big thing is to find a support network, because just talking about it and sort of like voicing your thoughts out loud will help in any situation, regardless of what issue it is you're facing. So finding a support network within engineering was really helpful for me. I found that through the Women in Engineering program, but there are a lot of different orgs where you could find people. Another thing that was really helpful was that I made use of like the career counseling centers on campus. So I went to, there's like engineering student services, which they're more like planning and like services, but I went to them and I was like, please tell me what to do with my life. So I use them that way. I also use, there's like the VIX career counseling centers on campus. That's not engineering specific, that's like all of campus. But I went there, I had a career counseling meeting, and I was kind of talking about how I didn't see my passions I didn't see my passions reflected in my classes. So then I kind of started talking about like what other things I could do on campus if I wanted to like add a major or change majors. That's how I ended up finding my second major, which is sustainability studies. I ended up adding that, and like now being in both, I'm so happy that I didn't like totally drop engineering right off the bat, because the intersection between the engineering stuff and the sustainability stuff is like exactly what my interests are. So I'm really glad I didn't like totally drop it just because I didn't immediately see the value, because the value's definitely there. It just took like the biggest problem for me was like seeing why I was doing it in the first place. Now that I'm going into my
For me, probably the biggest challenge that I faced was freshman year, was just learning how to deal with failure. Um, in high school, nothing was like super challenging for me, so I came and I was in like Calc 1, and I was like, all right, I already took like AB, like I got this. And then I just like didn't know how to study, and I didn't really study very well. And I got my first test back, and it was like a 68. And like looking back now as a senior, I'm like 68. Oh, that's not bad. Like that's pretty good. But when I got that test back, I literally was like crying in the like math seminar, because I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so horrible. Like I'm so stupid. Like I thought that I like knew this stuff, but it just was genuinely so challenging that I really didn't like. I don't know. I didn't prepare myself in the way that I like should have, but I didn't know that I was supposed to prepare that way, so I kind of just took that first kind of big blow, and I didn't really learn from it then. I kind of took me a while to figure it out, but from that I was like, okay, look back, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then another thing is kind of like with learning from failure is learning how to accept help and how to look for help. And so I never really used tutoring before, like in high school or anything like that. And so I started utilizing the free tutoring that they offer at UT, like for calculus and especially physics, because I came into UT not even taking physics. I don't know how they let me in, but I showed up to my first day of physics, and everybody else knew forces and all this stuff, and I was so lost. It was really difficult because I was comparing myself to everybody else, and I like just didn't know how to think about it. Like thinking about that kind of stuff just takes a very specific mindset, and I didn't really have that. And so it kind of just took going to tutoring, making study groups, like learning from my mistakes and my failures, and kind of moving forward and trying to see, okay, I did this wrong. How can I change in the future to try and do at least a little bit better? I don't need to be perfect, but I just want to try and utilize what I have to be a little bit better. And so, yeah, that was probably the biggest challenge that I
had. Which is kind of a segue into our next question, and both Jane and Abby have kind of touched on that, but questioning whether you should be studying engineering, if it's the career for you, and where have those doubts kind of centered around, and how have you pushed through, and are they ongoing? Do you feel like it's something you're continuing to have to address through the years of pursuing it? And what have you been able to resolve? I know Jane is like, doing sustainability and engineering, that was my resolution to the issue. But how about for anything else?
I like going in, like since being at UT, I have had like no doubts about what I wanted to do. Like I knew I wanted to do electrical engineering. There was never like that deviation. There was only deviation between like the different parts of electrical and computer engineering, because you could do hardware and software and stuff like that. But more of my hesitation of like going into engineering came really early in high school, because we had some engineering classes, and I had a teacher who was like pretty blatantly sexist and stuff like that, and would say like things that were, you know, the horror stories you had heard about people in engineering, like not being really friendly towards women. And so I was like, okay, is this really what I want to deal with like for the rest of my life? Like there's no way that everybody's like this, but do I want to encounter these people like and put myself in that situation? And I kind of saw some friends like start to leave engineering and start to go towards like things that didn't really have this type of environment. And that kind of was like, no, like I really like engineering, and I really like what I'm working on. And honestly, the people who have that attitude are just going to have to deal with me being there, and hopefully they'll learn. And honestly, I don't really care if they don't. So that's kind of where it came from, just kind of having that like confidence that like, yeah, it's not really, like the environment might change over time, because I've talked with like, I talked with a couple of people who, like at the WEP events where the staff, people who work at companies come in. I don't remember what it's called. I'm suddenly blinking. But the people who come to those events, they told me before that like the environment 20 years ago is not all the same. And so I'm kind of just like, well, by the time I get in the actual like workforce, it'll definitely be better. And so that's kind of my motivation, what's kept me in engineering.
Cool. Yeah, so I did talk about it earlier, but like kind of doubting my place in engineering has been a trademark of my engineering experience. Maybe that's a sad trademark, but that's just what my experience has been. Yeah, it's an ongoing piece, and I think for a lot of women in engineering, kind of like doubting or imposter syndrome is just an ongoing piece of their, almost like your career, which can be really discouraging. Again, a really huge thing for me has been finding a support network. I have a lot of friends who like, so my first year in engineering, I was part of the Women in Engineering Living Learning community. And so you live in Kinsolving with like a whole bunch of other women in engineering. Those, like the other women that I lived with have become some of my really close friends. And I like couldn't even count the amount of times that it's like, we'll be like really late night studying at a coffee shop or something, and like somebody will have an existential moment where they're like, what if I just like dropped out, you know, those scary thoughts that come only at 2 a.m. And it's like automatic support where they're like, we've all been there before. We totally, like, your feelings are valid right now, but you're smart enough for it. You deserve a place here, all that kind of thing. That is truly invaluable, maybe as cliche as it sounds, but it has kept me coming back to class every single time. So really can't recommend that enough. I think generally luckily I haven't had any like horror stories with professors related to like feminism or gender. The more discouraging thing for me has been, I guess like the sort of like quiet instances where you recognize like, oh, like I'm one of 3 women in the room or something like that, or, you know, I don't know, just stuff like that where it's not like very overt sexism or anything, but you kind of recognize that you are one of the few people there. Again, really frustrating. The Women in Engineering program has been invaluable to me because it just makes women so much more visible. I would say I have more friends in engineering that are women than men, just because I've found the right like spaces for me to be in that sort of lift me up instead of like keeping the same gender ratio that my classes have. I like to find more women in those spaces. That's really helpful. Generally, I think as far as like doubting whether you should be in engineering or not, don't let difficulty or gender be the thing that stops you. If you're in your classes and you're kind of like truly realizing this entire field is not like making me feel passionate and excited, then it's a good thing to consider switching, because you don't want to end up stuck in a program that you don't love and you're excited about. But if you do have those moments where you're excited, then run with them. Don't let like the difficulty of the classes, don't let anything like that discourage you, because that's something that you can get through as long as you have that.
My path to engineering was kind of like a special one. I was really good at math and science in high school. I liked all that stuff. I loved building Legos and like building IKEA furniture and all that stuff. But in my whole life, my family was like, you should be an engineer. And me, I'm like, really like, don't like being told what to do. So I was like, no, like, I'm not doing that. Like, just because you're saying it, like, I'm not going to do it. So I applied to all my colleges, actually pre-med, and then I got into UT, like into biology or something, and it was like the summer before I was going to start my freshman year, and I kind of was thinking about it, and I was like, oh, like, maybe my family's actually right, like, thinking about my career path and like, as being a doctor and all that stuff, I'm not that passionate about it, and so I decided to switch to civil engineering because I was really interested in sustainability and all that kind of stuff, and it kind of fit it, like, a little bit more in my eyes than the other ones, like from what I could see as a senior in high school. So I submitted like a request to switch majors before I came to UT, and I got a second admissions letter. I got in, and I came here, and then as I was talking about before, I really struggled my freshman year with like calculus and like physics and all those like heavy math and science classes that like I really enjoyed in high school. And so I really wasn't sure like if I could be successful in engineering. I didn't know if it was really what I wanted to do, because all the signs were saying, oh, you're not good at this. And so I took that as like, this isn't for you. So I was like heavily looking into switching into another major. But the issue is I couldn't find anything else that I actually really cared about enough to like switch into, which isn't like a great reason to say why I'm here today. But like looking back, like, then I stayed in my major because I didn't know what else I wanted to do. I finally got to my upper level electives like my junior and senior year and a little bit of my sophomore year, and I was like, okay, like this is stuff that's more applicable. It's less just learning how to do calculus, and it's how to apply calculus to like learning about transportation engineering and like construction and all that kind of stuff that I could actually understand. And so it kind of really reaffirmed my decision to stay, even though it was kind of a blind one, which isn't really the best thing to be saying right now, but like it ended up really working out for me. Just I'm the kind of person that like in general, like I don't really know what I want to do with my life. Like I don't really have a specific calling or path that I really like am drawn towards, and so I kind of just stayed with what I was doing, and I like really researched into like what I would be doing in the future. Just to kind of see like, oh, I don't like it now, but like later I can learn about this, this, and this. Yeah, and so even when I was looking for my job, I'm going to be doing construction management after I graduate. But even then, like when I was looking for a job, I was like, oh, like I'm really not sure. And so kind of now I've adapted the mindset that's like, well, if you're really not sure, just try stuff. And if you really, really like it, you're going to find the place for you. And if you don't like that, then that's one more thing that you can knock off your list and say, oh, I didn't like this aspect of it, this aspect of it, and this aspect of it. And so it can really kind of help tighten your tunnel and try to kind of guide you closer to where you're going to be in the future. So that's kind of my own personal experience with it.
I just want to add, I think that what Abby said about kind of like just sticking with it out of uncertainty your first and second years, and then like by your junior, senior year, or sometimes by your sophomore year, you get to like start choosing some electives and things that feel more applicable. I think that's a really common experience. I've heard that from a lot of people where it's kind of, and same with myself. The first year that I was in chemical engineering, I was like almost just sticking with it out of stubbornness. And then by the time that I had a bit more autonomy in like what classes I want to take or what electives I want to pick,
And you're doing a great job just tying it into the next questions that we have here is talking about how interdisciplinary engineering is and all of the different interests that you have. Have you had opportunities to participate in interdisciplinary work or have been part of programs that showcase or connect engineering to other fields so you can really see how broad and how much it covers?
Really done anything in particular like that's like a class that's interdisciplinary and stuff like that. But I think more so in like this, because we're required to take 14 hours of free electives and stuff like that, and they don't necessarily have to be in like electrical engineering, but they can be. So if you chose like a tech core that's more specific to software, but you want to look at some hardware stuff, you can do that. But you can also use that to like get your minor and stuff like that. So that kind of offers that opportunity. But me personally, I haven't really gotten into that type of stuff yet.
So I might have mentioned it earlier, but I am interested in like humanitarian engineering, which is a certificate in the School of Engineering. So a certificate is kind of like a minor. It is certificates are generally a few more hours than a minor, so a slightly bigger time commitment, and oftentimes they're a lot more interdisciplinary. So they bring in a lot of different fields instead of like taking all classes in one department. So I'm doing the certificate in humanitarian engineering. The goal of that is to bring in a lot of different fields into engineering. So I take classes in liberal arts and communications, generally related to like, you could choose like health and equity, or like I'm focusing a lot on like water systems. So like how do we, like in humanitarian crises like floods or like how do, or droughts, something like that, how would we provide water to like a community, something like that. So I really enjoyed that. I feel like it brings in a lot of different interests and kind of, instead of just being math and science, it's kind of like math and science in context. Like how do we use like social context to actually make our work relevant? I really liked that. A program that I've done through humanitarian engineering is called Projects with Underserved Communities. We refer to it as PUC. That is a program that mixes engineering students and social work students. And then these teams of engineering and social work students basically pair up with an international nonprofit. So mine was my like nonprofit that I was paired with was in India. And then you work with that nonprofit over the course of a year to develop some kind of engineering solution to a humanitarian issue that a community is facing. So in my case, I was working with a community in India, and they were in a floodplain, and they basically had no like dry land to go to whenever it was flooding there. So we designed and built like a kind of disaster relief shelter in that community. And so it's really cool because like you get to work remotely with that community throughout an entire year. And then the following summer, we traveled to the community and actually got to help build it, which was incredible. It was really cool because like I'm in chemical engineering, so I knew nothing about structures, but a lot of my team was like civil, structural engineering, social work. So I learned so much about like other disciplines that I would not otherwise have known. I know more about concrete and cement than like a lot of chemical engineers. So I'm like my little niche expertise, I guess. I love that program. I think there are a lot of other similar ones. So, like if humanitarian stuff interests you, then like that's the one that you should look into. But even if that's not really your thing, there are a lot of programs.
Yeah, for me personally, I kind of did take a little bit of a venture into an interdisciplinary area. I started taking the computer science certificate at UT just because I was really kind of interested in that and I wanted to learn more about it. So I was able to take some classes in computer science, and I didn't end up finishing the certificate just because it didn't really align with what I wanted to do. But I did get to take like 2 classes in that certificate, and so I mean I got to learn like about Python and how to code and like do all that stuff, which was really cool. Another thing that I know that a lot of people do is the Bridging Disciplines program. One of my friends is in that. I think there's a like Earth and Sustainability one, and so she's in civil engineering, and she's doing the civil engineer or the like I don't know, it's called like sustainability something, bridging disciplines program. And so that's kind of like the certificate, and you can kind of take classes in different schools, and you're required to. Like if some of the classes that they're requiring are in your degree plan, they say, okay, you can only take one of those. You have to take classes from these other schools and from these other disciplines because they want you to be well-rounded and everything. And honestly, if I could go back, I probably would have done that, but I just didn't jump on it soon enough. So if you really know that you want to, like, if you have an interest in something like that doesn't exactly like align with like your engineering degree plan, like, and you know that, like, you can get on that really soon. And even if you realize that later, like, it's not a barrier to you. So.
Great. So before we move into questions that have been submitted, and we've gotten a few of them, thank you. What is one thing that has been fantastic or memorable about your experience while you've been pursuing this engineering degree?
I can go first because I've kind of been reflecting on it.
Choose somebody else go first.
I thought about this question and I was like, well, I just graduated and I've been thinking about my time at UT, so I'm like, I can answer. And mine's gonna be like vague and kind of sappy, but like, I don't know, like just from talking like in this discussion that we've been having, like looking at my growth like from freshman to senior year, like you really grow so much. Like I came in freshman year, was doing horrible in all my classes, like didn't know how to learn, didn't know how to study, wasn't really good at talking to people, like all that kind of stuff. And like now I'm like, wow, like I'm literally a completely different person. Like you just grow so much and like you make such good friendships, especially like in the WEP umbrella. WEP's awesome. We love them. They changed my experience so much. And just like all the resources that they provide and like help you connect with other engineers, other females. WEP's event is basically the reason why like I got my job today. Yeah, that was really kind of vague, but I don't know. You just grow a lot and like you learn a lot just like through all your experiences and all the challenges that you overcome. Like it's hard to say that there's like one thing that was fantastic when it's really like the entire experience that kind of shapes you and kind of spits you out on the other side like I am here. Yeah, so.
I can go next, Sana, if you're still thinking, still ruminating. Yeah, so I agree. Growth is like the name of the game. And it's not just engineering, but like being on a college campus, like every single part of it is making you grow. And it's definitely not always easy, but it's so worth it. Just kind of like thinking. So I'm living at home for the first time since high school. And it's weird being in my high school bedroom, but also like very clearly feeling how different of a person I am. So it's a lot of growth. It's really cool. I would also say just generally, yeah, not to like keep plugging it, but WEP has been fantastic. Like I've loved being involved with WEP. I've done a lot of programs through WEP, both as a mentor and as like the receiving end, kind of like mentee, and I've loved it both ways. So I really recommend that you kind of dive into that community because it's fantastic. One thing that's like, I guess stands out is like one of my favorite parts is Girl Day, which is basically like UT engineering campus is open and a whole like thousands of K through 8th grade women come to campus. Well, it's really just students of all genders, all ages, come to campus and learn about engineering and science. And it's run by the Women in Engineering program. So like all of like the staff and students are basically running around with our heads cut off, like doing the best we can, but it is so fun. I absolutely love Girl Day. It's an exhausting day, but kind of to get the chance to like walk through the engineering campus where you usually see a lot of men and just see so many young girls like getting excited about learning and engineering. It honestly made me teary this past year because I wish I had something like that when I was like in 6th grade or something. So highly recommend Girl Day. I don't know that it will be in the same format this
came up with something, but it's a cheat. It covers everything. So I think basically kind of the fantastic thing is kind of realizing your imposter syndrome is for no reason, that you're actually able to get things, because I've definitely I expected every time I submit something, I expect there's no way I'm gonna get it. It's I'm very trying to. I'm very insecure when it comes to putting myself out there, just because I feel imposter syndrome, right? And so I think I've gotten a lot of things that I never expected to get. I think that's really good, and that kind of just makes me feel a lot better than I did going in. Particularly on Girl Day, I was a really little kid when I went to Girl Day, as a child, and so when I got to be on the other end and have somebody look at me like I was the engineer, I almost started crying when I was talking to this girl who was asking me questions about electrical engineering, and I was don't get emotional, and it felt just very much so real, oh, I'm an engineer, not I'm an engineering student, I'm an engineer, you get to throw the sticker and feel all great. And so I think kind of having that shift in terms of mindset from I want to be an engineer to I'm an engineer, that's kind of the thing that happens for me.
Awesome. Okay, so fantastic questions have been popping up. So we will just start kind of going in the order in which they were submitted. We are at 12:40, so just wanted to give a heads up about that. We are going to try to get through as many of these questions as possible. We'll see where we end up, where our stopping point might be, and then we can reevaluate then. So, Sana, you want to start us off? I believe.
Okay, the first one I see is, hey, Sana, do you think ECE was a really tough major? Yes. The answer is yes. It's definitely, I don't want to scare you, that's for sure, but it definitely will kind of confuse you at first, because, I had, physics classes in high school and stuff like that, so it's much more difficult if you didn't have that same experience, and so that's why there's a lot of opportunities for studying, tutoring. All the TAs are super nice. They want to help you. They will become some of your really good friends, because they will continue to TA one class ahead, and you will know them pretty well by the end of it. So just, yes, it's tough, but you can get through it, and it's okay. There's usually a curve, so it'll work out, I promise.
Sana, the second question we have is also assigned to you, but I think I'll just read it and then maybe we can all chime in a bit. The question is, what are some of the fun things you can do on campus as a first-year engineer, and what are some organizations that you might join? I definitely didn't find my, the organizations I'm in now, I didn't find my first year, so don't worry if you're not, immediately hitting the spot, but my first year,
I know specifically for there's usually a women in engineering org specifically for your major, I think so, but I know WECE is a really good one for us, not to plug them everywhere, but they're great, I promise, but I love all the people who run it. They're wonderful people. They have a lot of great opportunities. A lot of companies come in, and the company reps are really nice. Women in engineering program, get involved with that. I do know a lot of friends who kind of didn't do a major-specific one, but did Society of Women in Engineering, and that kind of got them more interacting with people who aren't necessarily in the exact same major, but in the same field, and that kind of got a little bit of diversity in terms of your friend group,
I don't really have a lot to add here because I did the bad thing and I wasn't really involved in a lot of stuff freshman year. But another thing that you can do is that, I think it's the first week of school, along Speedway, there's just hundreds of orgs tabling. They also do that orientation, that there's a night where you can walk around and people are join this, join this, join this. So that's just another way that you can kind of see what's out there and see what you like. So yeah, don't do what I did, not join anything freshman year.
Yes, so to kind of piggyback off of that, for those who are doing orientation, there are some student org fairs still happening virtually that you can start to figure out what are some of the organizations and stuff on campus that you could potentially get involved in. So our next question is, even if you aren't good at physics, engineering.
Yes, you can. I just graduated and I literally didn't take physics in high school. I had no experience with physics until I came to UT, and I just graduated. I didn't fail. You're all good. Like, it might be, and like kind of, sorry, my brain's everywhere. But going back to what I was talking about earlier, like how I was talking about how I was in physics and I was really stressed out because everyone else seemed like they had it all together and they knew what was going on. But in reality, like, that's not true. Like, a lot of other people will be struggling and you won't see that. And, like, people won't show it, but odds are a lot of other people are struggling as well. And just because it's hard doesn't mean that you can't do it. And there are so many resources out there for you. So in no way, like, if you're not good at physics, that's okay. You can still be an engineer. Like, in no way is that a barrier to your success, like, in engineering at this school. It's just a requirement from the state that, like, says that you need to take physics. It's not going to make or break you. I ended up pulling through with, like, not a great grade, but I still graduated. I did pretty well, and, like, I didn't really have to use physics, like, a lot in my major, but I use a lot of resources, and in no way is it, like, a barrier to your success in engineering at all.
Okay, the next question is about it's like an iPad versus a laptop for taking notes. So I've only had like 2 professors who didn't want you to use your laptops, and that was weird. I think it kind of depends like what classes you're going to be majority taking. For computer, like if you have to choose between purchasing one for ECE, you need to have a computer. I know for like, I think mechanical and maybe civil, that you have to have a certain quality computer for that. So if it comes down to cost, just choose a laptop and deal with paper notes. But if you can afford to get an iPad, it could be helpful depending on like how good you are at taking notes on an iPad. I ended up going my freshman year without like any tablet, and I just did paper notes, but I'm super messy, so that didn't work out, and I kept on having papers flying everywhere, just not in order at all. So kind of, I would try for at least for your first year to mimic whatever notes like style. Like if you took paper notes in high school, do paper notes for the first year, and then decide to make those big purchases. And then Abby.
So I would say if you don't want to do paper notes at all, and you can like do an iPad, I would recommend that. Not saying you have to do that, but my freshman year, that wasn't really a thing, but like in my senior year, so many people in my major used iPads just because it's a way for you to not use any paper. You can write on the slides. So you can download your slides onto your iPad, and then you can take notes on top of the slides. A computer is also really helpful, but in some like applications, like if you need written notes, like you probably should write. And I don't know, this is kind of rambly, but like an iPad kind of combines the computer aspect of like being able to look at slides and download stuff and like have that digital resource while also being able to write on top of it. So that's something I didn't personally use that. I just use a computer and I use like written notes. But if that was an option for me back then, like I probably would have used an iPad. You probably will still need a computer also, just because you might have to be coding or do any of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of hard to say like either or. I would say like if you're only going to do one, do a computer because it's probably going to be more useful to you. But if you can do an iPad, it would also be a really cool way to take your notes and stuff like that.
Cool. So the next question that we have is, how do you know that you found your engineering passion? So in my experience, all kind of like within a year, I took a lot of classes that were all related to generally the same issue of like humanitarian applications and water. So I took one class that was a chemical engineering elective called Design for the Environment. I took another class that was it was like a seminar class, so basically like a very open forum about how engineering can be used for humanitarian applications. So in that class, we focused a lot on refugee camps and how to provide like basic necessities to a setting like that. I did a program called GLUE, which is through the Women in Engineering program, and you get paired up with a graduate student and do research with them. So I did that program, and my research was related to like water filtration and water quality. And then in that same year, I was also doing projects with underserved communities, and I was working on like this actual humanitarian project. So it's kind of just like the perfect storm. It was like boom, boom, but like all of these interests are coming together at the right time, and I kind of like sort of the summation of all of those made me realize that I was interested in humanitarian stuff, in like environmental stuff, and then like more specifically that I was interested in doing water. So from there, I just kind of like picked classes that were related to what I thought I wanted to do. I took more classes that were, instead of being like math and science, kind of like interdisciplinary, like I've said. So I took a class about like how water affects like culture and art in Latin America, and like how water affects a lot more than just like our basic living necessities. Basically, every single time I took a class that I thought that was like somewhat related to those issues, it's just like this incredible feeling of like excitement in class. Like you just feel so affirmed. You're like, okay, like this is it. There's not really any other way to describe it, but I feel like when you know, like you know, and you're like, that's it, chief. Like.
Does anybody else want to share? We can move on to the next question. No? All right. I think Jane's got it covered. Okay, the next question is for you, Abby. It says all current students.
Looking at the wrong question. I did this, so I took Physics 1 at UT, and then I think all engineering students are required to take Physics 2. After my Physics 1 experience, I was not confident enough to go into Physics 2 at UT, and so I did take it over the summer, so I took Physics 2 and the lab over the summer. It was a really good experience for me. It was just nice to be able to learn at home, like on my computer. It was still difficult, and you still have to try, but it kind of removes the variable of if you have a good professor or not, which is something that kind of sucks that can affect your experience in a class, but that's the way it is. And so taking Physics 2 online kind of was like, it removed that variable of the potential of having like a horrible professor that doesn't teach you, because they kind of teach it to you in a very clear and understandable way because it's on an online format. And so I did take, I think I took it at Western Texas College. I took Physics 2 and Physics 2 lab. I also know of a lot of people that just have taken Physics 1 there and just not dealt with physics at UT at all. And just when you take classes at a community college or a college that's not at UT, it doesn't affect your GPA, but it will still show up on your transcript. The grade will show up on your transcript, but it won't show up on your GPA. But if you're going to apply to grad school or something, that grade will still matter, but that's just the disclaimer there.
So our next question is, oops, there we go. How would I go about getting into entertainment engineering in college? So I assume what you mean by entertainment engineering would be like video game design or production, or maybe like movie sound engineering, something like that. As far as I know, maybe Sana knows more about this, but so I know people pursuing that, but it's not like a major or like specific academic program that you can do at UT. But I know people who want to do that as their career, like with electrical engineering. Another thing you could look into is kind of like UT's entire major of that is called Arts and Entertainment Technology. That is in the School of Fine Arts. So they do a lot of stuff related to like, I don't know, just generally like multimedia stuff, video game design, stuff like that. I know a lot of people who are in that major and they really
friend who's actually, so electrical engineering and computer engineering, one major, it has 8 tech cores. One of them is software, and so I have a friend who's a software tech core is a specialty, and he works in video game design stuff. I'm not super clear on what it is, but it has to do with graphics and like light vectors and stuff like that, and he's explained it before, but I forget, but he's done internships and stuff like that, so that is an option. I don't know anybody who's done like more tangible things related to entertainment engineering though, so I don't know about that.
Yes, and then like robotics plays a lot of roles within like concert venues and set building and things. Also, like Disney, there's our theme park engineering student org group, and they do entertainment in that way. So it's kind of defining what type of entertainment it is exactly that you mean, because you can go from music to movies to theme parks, etc. And so it's kind of defining what is that, and then looking for those classes and those experiences that can help you build those skills up. And student organizations are also a great way to find those kinds of communities as well. If there's not like a strict academic program for it, you'll learn as a student that sometimes you just kind of build your own experiences and skills to lead you in the path that you're wanting to go. So we had a question about changing major at orientation or before orientation within the School of Engineering. So that is no longer an option. Abby was a very special case in which she was able to change her major at a time, and as she said, she has graduated, so that was 4 years ago. That has changed. So you are not able to change your major within the School of Engineering. You have to actually apply through an internal transfer process, and you won't be able to do that until the end of your first semester. Now that is can be a very competitive process, and it's absolutely at this moment just a numbers game. So it very much has to do with your GPA in your classes and how many spots are available in that department. So it can kind of vary on whether how high your chances would be of transferring or not. But that's also something you can talk with your academic advisor about as well if you're really concerned that you're not in the major that you really want. What we have typically recommended, and what I've typically recommended, is do some research into the major. Take a look and see what the broad application of that major is, and see if you can find something within it. As the other students have talked about, sometimes it may not seem super immediate how your one specific major can get you to your end goal, but because it's so interdisciplinary and collaborative across all kinds of fields, you can still end up working on a rocket without being an aerospace engineer, because so many other people are part of those kinds of projects. So just kind of keep that in mind, and feel free to reach out to us for resources on connecting with students if you want more information about that.
Cool. So the question is physics a big part of chemical engineering? No. That is just something you gotta get the credit for, and then it probably won't play in very much, so don't let it discourage you.
Okay, so at the end of our time here, we are 12:57. Time flies when you're answering questions and having fun and learning things in a not super lecture style. So we're going to go ahead and shift back into our other view. We still have quite a few questions left. Just want to let you know that we will take the time to answer all of those questions, and we can share them on our various different platforms, our YouTube channel, on our social media pages of Facebook, Twitter. If you are part of our Canvas Class of 24 group, make sure you accept that. We will post some of those answers on there as well. And as always, we'll have some other opportunities for you to be able to connect in with students, but we will try our best to answer all of the questions that were left because there were still quite a few, and we really appreciate you sending those in. So you can find these panelists and lots more amazing STEM role models in FabFems. That's kind of what our theme is. The FabFems directory is a national database of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics professions who are inspiring role models for young women and the incoming engineers that we're seeing. The FabFems directory is managed by the National Girls Collaborative Project and is accessible to young women, girl-serving STEM programs, and other organizations that are working to increase career awareness and interest in STEM. So STEM role models can create a FabFem profile and indicate how they want to be connected, either as just a role model with a profile online or reading it out so that way students can see about that role model's experiences, or even volunteering to be contacted. So some of these role models have put their information out there because they want you to reach out to them and utilize them as a resource. Students, you're able to search by a keyword or lots of other factors, zip code, field of work, ethnicity, or interest of engineering, lots of options. So take a look at the FabFems website and check to see if there's a role model near you and if they are open to connecting, and utilize that as a resource to start getting more information and hear from more folks about more women about their experience within engineering. We also want to encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. We have lots of questions like those that we've addressed today and more on our FAQ playlist within YouTube. We are typically adding videos to our playlist from day to day. So there will always be a new video, I should say, every day. We are constantly working and putting information out there. Our WEP crew are awesome. They are always making videos. Our current students are also making videos. To just share their experience, share the answers to questions that you all might have to, again, start getting more information about engineering and how to make your engineering experience the best that you can. So check back frequently, subscribe, utilize it. And with that, we are wrapping up. So thanks again for joining us today. We really look forward to seeing you next Friday for our next FabFems Friday with aerospace engineering students, alums, and engineering. So if you are an aerospace student or have an interest in that space, join us next week. And thank you very much. Bye, y'all. Have a great week.